Hello, my name is Ridley. Welcome to the video.
What's up, schmucks? We're not gonna mess around this week. I'm really late to talk about this, but I really want to get my thoughts out on this movie, so I might half-ass this. I might just record the audio, slap it over some gameplay, and call it a day, or I'll completely edit it. We'll find out. If I get to editing it and I realize that it's too time-consuming and I really want this to go out, I will half-ass it. I don't want to, but I will. So if that's the version of this that you're seeing, I'm sorry, but too bad. Let's just get into it. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the latest MCU movie and the second film entry in Phase 4 of the franchise, and it serves as the origin story for the titular Shang-Chi, played by Simu Liu. The story revolves around Shang-Chi as he tangles with his villainous father Wenwu, played by Tony Leung, who is the immortal wielder of the powerful Ten Rings. And straight up, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is awful. Awfully good, but also awfully flawed. I gotcha. So let's go through the good and what I liked, and then we'll discuss the bad and what I wasn't crazy about. First up, the cast here is incredible. Every single person in this movie is great, and they play their role to perfection. Simu in particular, he brings a lot of energy and passion to this character, and it definitely shows. Shang-Chi feels like a standard MCU character in a lot of ways, something I have criticized in the past, but they also do something interesting with him that I really loved. He's not a joke-cracking idiot. A lot of the MCU characters nowadays tend to just spit jokes left, right, and center, and it's annoying at this point. But Shang-Chi doesn't really fall into that pile. He does have funny interactions with people, but a lot of his comedic moments come from his reactions to things and his actions, opposed to outright jokes, and I really like that. I don't even know if he actually tells a joke in this movie, but it felt different than a lot of MCU characters who will just look at someone else and spit a joke. Instead, we have a character now who just doesn't do that, and I really enjoy that. And I think that's kind of sad that we've gotten to a point in a mega $1,000,000 franchise, and I'm getting excited over a character that does something even slightly different. But you know, whatever. I have been very critical of the action sequences in the MCU in the past, and I still am, because on the whole, they suck. And it made me nervous for Shang-Chi, a character who you would think would partake in a lot of action sequences, because this movie had to do something really different. Shang-Chi's main thing is that he does a big punch. He does kung fu. And I know that's not really what it is, but I'm gonna call it kung fu for the sake of simplicity. Anyway, in the MCU, everyone does kung fu. Everyone is a competent fighter. Even Doctor Strange can throw down, despite his hands being the equivalent of shredded cheese left out in the sun. So this movie had to display Shang-Chi as the best fighter that we've seen thus far. It had to show that Shang-Chi deserves a spot in the Avengers alongside Captain Marvel, Captain America, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, facing off against the biggest threats like Thanos, Kang the Conqueror, and Swarm. And this movie did exactly that! Shang-Chi's action sequences are amazing, done in long flowing camera takes and displaying a grand spectacle of kicks and punches. And a lot of it is done in camera by Simu himself. He's amazing! This felt so different because the fights here are actually good, and even without any powers, Shang-Chi can throw down. I'd love to see a Daredevil-esque hallway fight in one take for the sequel. I think that'd be awesome. And I saw a lot of people praising the choreography for this movie, and yes, it is amazing. I'm not gonna undersell that, but that was never the issue for past MCU movies. The choreography in a lot of the MCU films is really good, and you can tell the moves are there and the actors put in the work, but that's not where the issue was. The issue came down to editing and filming the scene itself. The Russo brothers made everybody think that these overly choppy fights were the way to go, and everyone just did that, and they were bad. But I'm hoping now that Simu Liu and director Dustin Daniel Cretton can change some minds with this, because these fights are incredible. Shang-Chi was whipping out moves Steve Rogers could only dream of. While this movie does have great visuals, awesome fights, and a lot of fun characters, it does have its fair share of flaws, so let's talk about them. So let's speak on Wenwu, the latest MCU villain, and how he's super dull. I saw some people say that he's a super emotionally complex villain, and he's not. Light spoiler, but he's a simp. And that's his whole character. Tony Leung is amazing, and he's a badass, but not as a villain. Wenwu is just kind of nothing. We're told that he's done all this awful shit, and he's a super intimidating man, but we never see that side of him. The only time he does some truly brutal shit, it's a completely justified moment, not a villain moment. Yeah, he has bad intentions, and he has a big plan that involves killing a lot of innocent people, but that's because he's misguided. But even then, him being misguided, there is depth to that, but the movie doesn't go in depth with it. None of that as delved into. It felt very shallow. I like the idea of villains who aren't really villains who aren't monsters, but there's none of that with this. We're told that Wenwu is a monster, an unstoppable force, but we don't see any of that. We just see him be a sad old man, and I felt bad for him more than anything. And I don't feel like that's what the movie wanted me to feel, so it felt like they failed. He does some cool shit, and he has some badass lines, like when he tells an elder, "Watch how you speak to me, young man. I have lived 10 of your lifetimes." That was cool as fuck, but beyond that, Wenwu just felt bland and forgettable, especially when he's measured against someone like Killmonger. I understood the motivations behind what Wenwu was doing, I understood why he was doing it, but on the whole, he didn't feel like a good villain. This movie also has a really shit third act. It's just a big CGI nightmare, and an absolute waste of its central conflict. Light spoiler, but not really. This movie sets up a dramatic and interesting son versus father conflict, and it gets bored of it halfway through the third act, and it exchanges it for something far less interesting. I also saw a lot of people say,
"This doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It changes everything."
Shut up, just shut the hell up. This movie may have elements that are unique from most MCU movies, but overall, this is still very much an MCU movie. I never felt like I was watching not an MCU movie. They couldn't even get through this movie without mentioning Iron Man. Like, really? Why? Tony Stark got what he deserved, quite frankly. Just shut up about it. This movie even features the classic case of the hero going,
"Hey, only one person could ever beat the villain. Teach me what they dedicated their entire life to, and I'll learn it and master it in an afternoon."
Like, really? Are you kidding me? Overall, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is really good. It introduces us to a great new character brought to life by a super talented actor, Simu Liu, and it shows off some really colorful and impressive visuals, along with some really impressive and entertaining fight sequences. However, the movie does falter with a weak and forgettable villain, some plot conveniences that are just annoying, and a third act that collapses in on itself after abandoning a much more interesting conflict. And that's that. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day.
This concludes the